Hello, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Green Screen. As you can see, there's no green screen behind me. For this episode, this is episode 7, I believe. Yes, this is episode 7. Yay! Um, so, in my last episode, I threatened to do Winnie the Pooh and my relation to it. So, I'm going to get that party started for this episode. So um, let me backtrack a second. All right. So, you know, how I normally do these episodes is that I talk about a book in my library, my personal library, and I talk about my relation to it or my relationship to it and how it happened that I came across this book in my life and why it's so special. So, this book, Winnie the Pooh, or rather, the complete tales of Winnie the Pooh, trying to fix that. There we go. The Complete Tales of Winnie the Pooh by A. Milne with illustration by Ernest or E.H. Shepard. Okay. So it is clear well, no, it's not clear, but I know for a fact that I had to have gotten this in a clearance rack at Barnes and Noble. You know why? Because, and this is how I know. I don't know if you could see that, but see how much it cost? This book cost $35. As much as I love books, I will never, rarely pay that much for a book, ever. So that's how I know I got this on the clearance rack. So I don't really know. Oh, and I just love these illustrations. When I saw this book, I was like, yeah, I have to have this. I have to have this. I don't know why, but I have to have it. So I got this book, and like I said, I didn't know why I had to have it. I just had it. And then in 2013, yes, I'm going to say this on camera, I became a grandma. My younger son made me a grandma of a little girl. And at first, I was none too thrilled. And it had nothing to do with me being a grandma. That wasn't it. I'm not that vain or that sort of self-centered about, oh my God, I'm too young to be a grandmother. No, you're a grandmother when you're a grandmother, and that's it. And the thing is that in my family, certain numbers repeat. And I'm sure if you think about your family, you find that certain numbers repeat in your family, right? So in my family, the number 11 repeats a lot in different ways. We have my grandmother, me, my mother, a cousin, and an aunt by marriage were all born in the month of November. I am 11 years apart from my younger half brother, and I am 11 years apart from my aunt, and my aunt was 11 years apart from her sister, my mother. So that's how deep 11 plays in this family. Another number that that has a repeat role in this family is the number 20. So I became a mother at 20. My mother became a mother at 20. And my son became a father right around like 3 months before he turned 20. So, yeah, I'm serious. Like, it's really weird in my family. So, in any event, I become a grandma of a little girl. And how do I put this? They weren't ready. Okay. The parents weren't ready. They could be angry as much as they like for me saying this if they ever watch this, but they were not ready to be a parents. Not that I say not anybody. Let me backtrack. Not I'm not saying that all people are ready to be parents because you're never really prepared, right? You can read as many books as you'd like, but you're never really prepared for a parent until it actually happens, and then it's all hands on deck. But these two, the ones who made me a grandma, needed extra help. And but one of my best memories with my granddaughter was when she was a baby. She was an infant. She couldn't have been no more than, I don't know, maybe a month, probably less than that. And of course, I was going over and helping out, as much as bringing whatever I could to help them out, being a babysitter, letting them go out and have their adult time. I'll babysit the baby, no problems here. So what I know, because I've been a writing tutor. I used to tutor adult students at the University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I did that for 3 years. And while I was a tutor there, I did some professional development, and one of those things that I did was attend sort of a lecture about how to provide services to people who are hearing disabled, because um, what I learned from this lecture is that because people with hearing issues, the reason why they talk the way they do is because they can't hear the rhythm, the pattern of speech all that well. And because they are not getting that infusion of information when they're very young, oftentimes as adult they have difficulties in writing. So what I also learned is that we learn patterns of speech from the time we're infants. Excuse me. It's allergy season. It's been horrible, but I digress. But we learn our speech from hearing without listening as babies. And the reason why some of us are really good and we know how to self-correct ourselves in writing is because of the pattern of speech that we heard as babies. So knowing that, I was like, let me set this baby off early. Let me set my granddaughter off early. So when she was a baby, I would hold her in my arms and I would read this book to her when I got to babysit her. So that's the close my close attachment to this particular book, and why I will never ever lose it is because I remember those days when I used to read to her. Okay, so from there, something a companion, not a oh, how do I start this off? Okay, all right, picture it. It is 2014, and Lisa is working as a professional proofreader for MetLife, the insurance company that used to have Snoopy as their mascot. Yeah, they severed that relationship. But at the time that I was working, Snoopy, the whole Peanuts gang was part of their marketing collateral. They had like a special deal with Charles Schultz's, who is the creator of Peanuts, with his estate. They had like this special agreement. And it was very rigid. Let me tell you something. Peanuts is very, very, like, very picky. Like, if you're going to render Charlie Brown, you need to use this Pantone color and no other. You're not supposed to render the characters in any way that may construe any type of message or anything like that. Is not to be attached to any messages that are political in nature and all of that kind of stuff. Like, you couldn't have their faces this way, but it was very, very rigid. Any event, so I'm working there, but I'm also juggling like four other jobs, and I kid you not, because like I said, it wasn't the greatest. I didn't have the greatest experience in Connecticut, job wise or any other else wise. It was always a struggle, always a battle. And if you remember, 2008 into 2009 was like it leveled the playing field as far as everybody being broke and out of work, right? It didn't matter what degree you had, you were broken out of work. And that's what it was like for me. I lost my full time job in 2009, the same year that I graduated um, from graduate school. And my supervisor, who laid me off at the time, her justification was that I'm going to be all right because I have a master's degree. And I didn't like her anyway. I really didn't. for my own reasons that I won't get into, but I really did not care for her. So I know that it was all personal, and I was like, you know what, screw you. You're right. I do have a master's degree, but it did make things difficult because of my specialty. My specialty is writing and nothing else. Yes, I can do photography. Yes, anything that's publications related. If it has to do with the web, yes, I can do it. But I am a writer. That is my specialty. So finding writing gigs, as far as finding writing gigs are concerned, it's teach. That's it, right? It's teaching. Unless you're an established author, which I was not. So, the old saying goes, when you can't do, teach. So at that time, I managed to cobble together 5 different part time jobs. I was an adjunct instructor at 2 different colleges, plus, I was proofreading, plus, I was a writing tutor. And so I was bouncing all over, bouncing back and forth. So one of the jobs that I had was proofreader at MetLife. So at the time I was a smoker. I still smoke, but I vape now. I don't do the cigarettes. I've been vaping for like 8 years, and it has made a tremendous difference in my health. I'm just saying, I'm not advocating or pushing vaping. I'm just relaying my experience. Anyway, so I used to, so there was one other person. She was a graphic designer, and we would go and have our smoke breaks together. So at the time, I was teaching college writing, and I think it was at Manchester Community College, I want to say, at that time. No, no. Yeah, 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 yeah. It was Manchester Community College. I was teaching part-time there. And I was talking about how I try to make my class interesting because it's really so difficult to get students, you know, to realize that you don't have to be the best writer, but if you just open up your mind and listen to what I'm trying to teach you, you can successfully get through college with the knowledge that I'm going to give you in writing. So we were out there talking, and she said, "Have you ever seen I, Claudius?" And I said, "No, what's I, Claudius?" And she said, "Well, wait, hold on. Have you ever read The Tao of Pooh?" The Tao of who? It was straight out of the book. So let me introduce you. All right. So here's the book, The Tao of Pooh. And this is by Benjamin Hoff. And Pooh, not Pooh, well, what Benjamin Hoff does through Pooh is he explains Taoism or Taoism, if you prefer. All right. And so she tells me about this book, and she says, you know what? You also need to watch I, Claudius. And I said, why? She said, she said, you have to read this first before you watch I, Claudius. Now, I, Claudius, here's the book here, by Robert Graves. It was developed into a series. I think it's 11 episodes in the series, and it was just one season, right? And it basically covers the life of, now let me get the name of the emperor. Oh, my days. The emperor was, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. So the emperor that was covered in the series was Tiberius Claudius Drusus Nero Germanicus. He comes before Nero. As a matter of fact, Nero and his mother poison Claudius to assume the throne or the emperorship or whatever you want to call it. But so, you know what? I'm going off subject. Hold on a second. So she tells me I have to read or listen to, because she was so nice. What she did was she had it in an audiobook. And so she copied the audiobook and she gave it to me so that I can listen to it because I told her I love listening to audiobooks because I was doing a lot of that at the time because I was driving everywhere. So I was listening to audiobooks a lot. So she said, "Okay, let me give you the audiobook to it." So she said, "Listen to it and then watch I Claudius." So let me talk about the Tao of Pooh for a second. So Taoism by itself, there's the Tai Chi Ching. You know what? Actually have that. Hold on one second. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I even have the Tao Te Ching. So, the Tao Te Ching by itself has it's this is you can see why I bought this book. Can you see the cover? Isn't it gorgeous shade of blue? Oh my god, and it's like satiny. I saw it in the clearance rack and I had to have it. There was no disputing this, right? And look at the nice, I got it to match. Of course I had to get, right? So as you can see, the Tao Te Ching, let me back it up a second if you can see that. Oh, this lighting. I'm let me there we go. All right. Okay, there we go. Much better. All right. So you can see that it's the Tao Te Ching is like a series of really short poems. And, you need a guide to sort of help you understand what each of these sort of stanzas, I don't know how to, verses, and what they mean. You need a Tao master to sort of understand what this is all about. So this is this explains this because this by itself you really need someone who understands Taoism to sort of break it down for you, all the verses and what they mean. And so that's what Benjamin Hoff does here. And he even says that um you need, he said, "I'll do my best to break it down for you, even though you should be learning from a master. I'll do my best to break it down. And the way that I can help you to understand it is through Winnie the Pooh." So in the Tao of Pooh, what Benjamin Hoff does is he says, if you want to understand it, Taoism or Taoism, look through the different characters that are in Winnie the Pooh to understand what the Tao Te Ching is saying. So, Winnie the Pooh himself exemplifies the way or Tao. And he does that through being, now, he does this because he is Puh, and that's how you pronounce it, soft Puh. And it's called the uncarved block. And if you've ever watched or read Winnie the Pooh, like if you have Disney Plus, please go to the Disney section of that app and you will see Winnie the Pooh there. And I think the Winnie the Pooh also includes the companion piece to Winnie the Pooh. And I think it was, I forget, wait a minute, it's in the back here. The House at Pooh Corner. So if you know the series of books for Winnie the Pooh, it has it here. So there's Winnie the Pooh, and then there's the House at Pooh Corner, and then When We Were Very Young, and we are six. Now we are six. So there's all these companion pieces to Winnie the Pooh. And so the Disney version, I think, combines the first and the companion piece of Winnie the Pooh. But if you go and watch it, you'll notice that Pooh sort of appears simple, right? He seems all muddled and confused whenever you ask him a question. You never kind of know what the response is going to be. But the thing is with Winnie the Pooh is that no matter what happens, everything always seems to work out in the end without him doing absolutely nothing. By him just being Pooh, Puh, the uncarved block, things always seems to work out all right. He doesn't overthink things. He sort of follows along with his own nature and with how things go, and he succeeds without really trying. Have you ever met people like that? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've met people like that in which they do little to nothing, but everything always seems to work out for them. And that's because by being puh or being the uncarved block, you are understanding the way and how the universe works. And if you go with the way, things will work out for you. You will also find inner peace. You won't be fighting all the time. You won't be frustrated all the time. You might even find happiness when you understand the universe, how it works, and how you should always just go with the flow. So I'm going to highlight certain passages in this book for you that sort of explain the uncarved block. So here's one. So here we go. When you discard arrogance, complexity, and a few other things that get in the way, sooner or later you will discover that simple, childlike, and mysterious secret known to those of the uncarved block. Life is fun. So that's what, so if you notice Pooh, he's never really miserable. He gets his head stuck in a pot of honey. Is he miserable? No, because he understands, this is the way life is. And he just goes with it. So, another part of this regarding the uncarved block is from the state of the uncarved block comes the ability to enjoy the simple and the quiet, the natural and the plain. Along with that comes the ability to do things spontaneously and have them work, odd as that may appear to others at times. As Piglet put it in Winnie the Pooh, Pooh hasn't much brain, but he never comes to any harm. He does silly things and they turn out right. So that's what being the uncarved block is. It's just realizing that there's no need to stress or fight against certain things in life. If you just let go, they all work out in the end. So Hoff goes on to use the other characters in Winnie the Pooh as what you should not be, because being like Winnie the Pooh is following Taoism, right? But if you follow the other characters in Winnie the Pooh, no, you're going to wind up frustrated and not really getting anywhere, and things won't work out for you because you're so arrogant that you're fighting against certain things. Or, well, let me jump to part in the book. So um with the problem with Owl, the problem with Owl is that he has all this knowledge. He's constantly reading books, he's acquiring all this knowledge, but he doesn't do anything with the knowledge. He doesn't share the knowledge. As a matter of fact, he sort of lords it over people that, I know this and you don't, right? So, Owl represents the scholar who studies knowledge for the sake of knowledge and who keeps what he learns to himself or to his own small group, writing pompous and pretentious papers that no one else can understand, rather than working for the enlightenment of others. Okay, so we should not be like Owl, in which we accumulate all this information, we don't share it, or we share it like when we're good, when we feel like it, but not consistently. Okay, because we have the power in knowing what others don't. So that is why we should not be like Owl. If we want to learn so much and we read all these books, then we should share that knowledge to help others and bring others along to that thinking or that enlightenment or that understanding. Okay. So here's one part. So I'm going to read this part and it'll drive the point home. Now, one rather annoying thing about scholars is that they are always using big words that some of us can't understand. And one sometimes gets the impression that those intimidating words are there to keep us from understanding. Though that way, the scholars can appear superior and will not likely be suspected of not knowing something. After all, from the scholarly point of view, it's practically a crime not to know everything. Now, when I read that passage, I think about lawyers. I know I'm drawing out my New York accent right now, but that's what I think about. Now, as a proofreader, it is very interesting, especially as you switch from industry to industry. There are certain industries that do make an attempt to communicate information very simply so that you do not need a PhD to understand it. But there are others who do not do that. And the one profession that sort of survives on that are lawyers. How many times, I mean, do you know how to read a contract? That all that what we call in the really legalese. Proofreaders, we call it legalese. It's its own language, right? And it's specifically written so that only other lawyers can understand it. You or I, we need a lawyer. We need to hire a lawyer in order to understand any kind of legal document or any kind of law the way it's written. And God forbid if they don't use proper punctuation. Seriously, the laws, the way they're written, if you're going to write them so convoluted, then you need to use proper punctuation because I can pull a handful of news articles that highlight lawsuits that occur because there was so much confusion with the way the punctuation was used. I'm not exaggerating. This is a thing, go look it up. Go on any of, once you if you subscribe to a newspaper and you get past the paywall and you but there have been lawsuits about commas and semicolons. Just saying. And lawyers are the worst of it. They specifically write for other lawyers. Another guilty party are the professors that they're talking about, those in academia. English professors, let me tell you something. Y'all are writing to each other. Y'all ain't writing to us students. How the hell do you expect us to understand what it is that you wrote when you can't even make your thesis or your main ideas clear? I had to stop ranting. I had to stop. But in any event, you know what my pet peeves are when it comes to writing. Okay, now you know that there's a pet peeve out there. Okay, so that's owl. Now, what comes next? We have the character of Eeyore. Now, you know Eeyore, right? He's gloomy, he's droopy. It'll rain today, it'll rain tomorrow, it'll rain next week. That's Eeyore. All right. So Benjamin Hoff explains owl, and he explained. Now let me see if I can get to Eeyore. Okay, so Eeyore, excuse me for a second. Okay, I'm back. So I'm going to skip. I'm not going to bring up Eeyore right now. I'm going to follow the book. So there's this thing in Taoism or Taoism called inner nature. You know what? Let me stop for a second because the reason why I've just remembered why this coworker recommended the Tao of Pooh. At the time, I was teaching a class, English composition. It was at MCC, at Manchester Community College. And if you remember, for my Stephen King episode, I used rose matter to teach one of my writing course. I used that. I had the students read it and they loved it. And then I would bring up um, certain philosophies, specifically Aristotle, and I would have the students bounce the philosophy, certain aspects of Aristotle's philosophy against the actions of Rose, really Rosie, in the book Rose Matter. So my students really liked the assignment. They once you broke down Aristotle to them, they were like, "Oh, bet," because we would have the discussions in class after each chapter was read. So I had this one student, this Asian student, that was like, she got an A in my class, or A or an A minus, I think, pretty much an A. And she was an excellent writer, but she also took to the material like a duck to water. And she took it one step above. And what she did was, when she was talking about the actions of the character based on her thesis for the paper that she had to submit for the assignment, so what she did was, not only did she take aspects of Aristotle's philosophy, which was part of the assignment, and and match it with the actions of Rosie, she also brought in Taoism. So when I mentioned this to the coworker, that's when she brought up this book and to watch I Claudius. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me jump back into it. So in Taoism, there is this thing called inner nature. And you can call it whatever you want. You can say that it's some instinct or whatever. But, there's that voice that's in your head that always just speaks the right thing, and you often ignore it and you wish you hadn't, once you realize, that things didn't work out the way you wanted them to. And they probably would have worked out better if you had listened to your inner nature, or followed your inner nature or yourself. And the thing is, when it comes to Taoism, you should trust that more. Okay. You should rely on your inner nature more, because your inner nature, if it's in tune with the way, everything, just like for Pooh, will always work out for you. So, and so what Taoism also teaches you is that you have to learn, once your inner nature, what that is, you need to learn to work with that inner nature. So, Benjamin Hoff, if you remember from Winnie the Pooh, there is this silly little um, poem called Coddleston Pie, or song, that Pooh sings. So the Coddleston Pie principle, which is what Benjamin Hoff calls it, sort of explains that inner nature, or what that inner nature is. So I'm going to read this. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston pie. A fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston pie. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston pie. A fish can't whistle, and neither can I. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston pie. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston pie. Why does a chicken? I don't know why. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston pie. Now, you can hear, and Hoff even says that you can hear the first part. That it's fairly obvious. A fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. He says, very simple. It's obvious, and yet you'd be surprised how many people violate, this simple principle every day of their lives, and try to fit square pegs into round holes, ignoring the clear reality that things are the way they are. We will I'm not going to get into, there's a selection of writings from Schwanze that sort of brings that point home. But basically, what this means, and what and that first sentence, a fly can't bird, but a bird can fly, is that everything has its own place. This is from Hoff. Everything has its own place and function. That applies to people, although many don't seem to realize it, stuck as they are in the wrong job, the wrong marriage, or the wrong house. When you know and respect your own inner nature, you know where you belong. You also know where you don't belong. One man's food is often another man's poison. And what is glamorous and exciting to some can be a dangerous trap to others. All right. So, how many times have you heard the saying, what is one man's meat is another man's poison? So, that basically encapsulates. Am I using that word correctly? I don't think so. But that sort of brings the point home to that first sentence in Coddleston Pie that says, a fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. It's basically knowing where you fit. And if you're miserable at some place, if you're working a job and you just feel like you're on, and I've been in a number of jobs where I felt this way, in which I feel as though it's them and I'm like this weird little alien that just came out of nowhere and I'm in this place and I really don't fit. But here I am trying to make it work and fighting and fighting and fighting and realizing that it just wasn't a good fit. I gave it my all to try and get some sort of uh, contentment from the work, but there was none to be had. So I've learned that when I stopped going into an office, because I work from home. I am a remote worker, and I found that as a remote worker, I am less exposed to gossip. I'm less exposed to people who um, are in that predicament where they are working a job in which they just don't fit, and but they're trying to make it work, and in the process they make other people miserable. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not exaggerating, or I'm not, pulling stuff out of my ass. You people know what I'm talking about. So for the next line, a fish can't whistle and neither can I. This is about it should be obvious, but I'm going to break it down for you anyway. A fish can't whistle and neither can I. That basically means understanding your limitations. Okay? We all have limitations. That does not make us, you know, defective people, is that we all can't be good at everything. But once you understand those limitations, you work with those limitations. And if you are really smart, you will flip those limitations into a strength. All right? So that's what the your inner nature, that's what you should be working with when it comes to understanding your limitations. Face up to them, own up to them, realize that you're just not good at this, but you're good with that. And if you're not good in this, find out a way to flip it and make it into a strength. Okay, and that's what Taoism teaches you, or what it makes you face up to. All right. So, as we move through Coddleston Pie, oh yeah, that's I yeah. So if we go and we continue on, if we continue on with Coddleston Pie, right, through the verses, ask me a riddle and I reply, inner nature. Ask me a riddle and I reply, things are as they are. Ask me a riddle and I reply, Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. Okay. So that's like, I'm not going through all of it. I'm sort of just like gave you the cliff notes to that. But that is one of the poem Coddleston Pie. That's how it sort of amplifies what inner nature is and how to best tune into it. Because once you do, life is fun, like the uncarved block. So So, one of the key principles to that inner nature is we have to work with our own characteristics, flip those limitations into a strength. And by doing that, we establish self reliance. Okay. So, the way of self reliance starts with recognizing who we are, what we've got to work with, and what works best for us. Right. So, here's a song that Benjamin Hoff has. And this is not in Winnie the Pooh. I think this is something that Benjamin Hoff brilliantly came up with. So, here's the song. How can you get very far if you don't know who you are? How can you do what you ought if you don't know what you've got? And if you don't know which to do of all the things in front of you, then what you'll have when you are through is just a mess without a clue of all the best things that can come true if you know what and which and who. So it's sort of these brilliant uh, simplification of this very complex and ancient philosophy that Hoff does such a brilliant job, of making this accessible to everyone while at the same time respecting the Tao Te Ching and the wisdom within it without sort of cheapening it, you know? And there's certain things in here now you don't have to go to Tibet and sort of, learn from the masters and then, start practicing it every day. No, because there's certain things in here that are just life lessons. It's not like it's a religion that needs to be practiced. These are life lessons, people, of how to go through life with less misery and more happiness when you understand your inner nature and your inner self, your limitations, what you have to work with, and just go out there and find the way. Okay, so there is this approach in Taoism, and it's called Wu Wei. Now, all right, so I'm not even going to try and I'm going to let Benjamin Hoff tell it. So, at its highest level, Wu Wei is indefinable and practically invisible because it has become a reflex action. In other words, of Shuangzi, the mind of Wu Wei flows like water, reflects like a mirror, and responds like an echo. So when you use Wu Wei, and this is according to Benjamin Hoff, using Wu Wei, you go by circumstances and listen to your own tuition. How many times, I talked about this a little bit before, how many times when you're approached with a certain, or you approach a certain situation, or a certain situation comes to you, and your gut is telling you to go and do this, but you have all these doubts. You're wondering, if I do this, what, there could be, this might not work out so well for me. Okay. But I have found, the older I've gotten and the more I rely on my intuition, my inner nature, I find that things work out well. And seriously, like, I'm not just saying this to push the book. I'm not trying to sell book. Benjamin Hoff ain't paying me for this. Nah, none of these people are paying me to talk about these books. Excuse me. Allergies are just awful. I don't know about you, but everything's popping off down here, and my energy, my allergies are just horrible, and I need to get on Zyrtec. But I digress. So no, these things right here are just. I have found that the things in this book to be true based on me using or applying these principles in my own life. So the older I get, the more I rely on my inner instinct for certain, even for purchases. Even for purchases. There are some things that I come across, and the minute I see it, I'm like, you know what? I need to get this, and I need to get this now. Something tells me I need to get this now. And later on down the line, I come to appreciate me following that inner nature or listening to my inner self, because something happens and it shows that I'm really glad that I got it. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. So when I moved down here, um, I moved in December, but it was a fairly mild December. But the coats that I had, the winter coats that I had, I was kind of bored with them. I didn't want to wear them anymore. They were passed down by my mom, and they were the type of coats that need to be dry cleaned. And I was just like, nah, I'm good. And then I sort of busted the zipper and I never took it to get it fixed. And I was just like, you know what? I need a new coat. I need a new coat. So two of my favorite clothing retailers, I'm being kind of funny or fancy, but two of them are Land's End and the other one is LL Bean. I love these two. Land's End especially. I've been buying from Land's End for 15 years. I've been shopping at Land's End. And the really one of the really good things that they have is outerwear. Same thing for LL Bean. Both of them have really quality outerwear, but they're expensive as hell. But with all these Affirm and all this kind of stuff, like the impossible is possible through Affirm or Klarna or all of these other pay as pay on a monthly basis kind of things. So the coat that I wanted from Land's End, I wanted cotton duck fabric. If you don't know what cotton duck fabric is, it's sort of like it feels like canvas. And so I know that it will block out any wind. Cotton duck. Just dope, right? So it was cotton duck with nylon polyester shell lining, and multiple pockets, and it came in this hot shade of red, sort of like a little brighter than the red of this lipstick. And I said, I want that red because red is a color that I've been embracing as I've been getting older. Blue will always be my favorite color, but I've been embracing red more and I felt more confident because my car is red and that jacket is red and a whole bunch of other stuff that I have in my wardrobe is dead ass red. So I got that coat in that bright shade of red. And that was 3 years ago. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if that coat is still available, or let me see what other colors they have. Sure enough, when I went to the Land's End um, catalog or their online website, that coat in that color was no longer available. So that's what I mean by, like even with purchases, trust your instinct. And 9 times out of 10, maybe you paid too much for that particular item, but later on down the line, you will come to appreciate the money that you paid for that item because it was money well spent. Okay? So, when it comes to Wu Wei, right? You go by circumstances and listen to your own intuition. When you do that sort of thing, people may say you have a sixth sense or something. All it really is, though, is being sensitive to circumstances. That's just normal. It's only strange when you don't listen, right? So that's what Wu Wei is. It's sort of like, um, it says, it's sort of like just when you follow your intuition, you're kind of following the way because the way is just based on a general reaction to circumstances based on your nature and the nature of the thing that you're interacting with. If I'm getting too deep in the weeds, I apologize, but it's the only way that I can let this flow. So, the Wu Wei approach to conflict solving can be seen in the practice of the Taoist martial art Tai Chi Chuan, or Tai Chi, excuse me, Tai Chi Chuan, the basic idea of which is to wear the opponent out either by sending his energy back at him or by deflecting it away in order to weaken his power, balance, and position for defense. Never is force opposed with force. Instead, it is overcome with yielding. So I guess you can think of that as for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So you match the energy that you're receiving. So, so that's basically, you know, how you deal with Wu Wei. It's your inner nature and reacting to circumstances naturally instead of forcing or trying to conjure up something or a response to it. So I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't want this to be too long. But Benjamin Hoff takes all the other characters in the book and matches it to things that you shouldn't do, like I said before. So for Al is gaining too much wisdom. For when it comes to Tigger, he is always just going boom, 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 boom. He never stops to think. He's always bouncing. Tigger bounces. Tigger, 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 Tigger. He's over here. He's over there. He's over everywhere, right? But Tigger doesn't stop to think. He just does. And sometimes when you don't slow it down and pump your brakes, it won't work out for you. All right. And as it comes, when it talks about Eeyore, you know what? I'm gonna stop here. I'm not gonna get into it, but I do recommend this book. There is there is yeah, there we go. There is an audio version to this, naturally, and so I highly recommend that you read or listen to the Tao of Pooh because it really does give you life lessons that really do help with how you interact with certain situations and people in your life. I've learned a lot from this book. All right. So Benjamin Hoff, I mean, I guess this book came out, let me The Tao of Pooh was published in, I don't know if you can see that. It was published in 1982. Always try to do it from this side. It's published in 1982, okay? So, I guess now I don't remember because in 82 I was in middle school. But apparently, this book was so successful. 10 years later, Hoff writes The Tay of Pooh. Now, I was hoping to finish this. You see that I started it. I was hoping to finish it before I do this episode. But you know what? What I can do is I can finish this and then have an episode. I'll figure out where I was. I guess. I'll figure out where I was. I'll figure it out. Now, moving on. Now, you may ask me, Lisa, how does all of this relate to I, Claudius? Well, I'll tell you. Now, this is the book. Like I said, I watched the series, and the series is available for streaming. I will not mention that entity's name that has that series available because they don't pay me. You heard? They don't pay me. I'm not an affiliate. So you do your own search for I, Claudius. Can you tell I'm a bit bitter? I won't get into that. But yeah, so the series is really cool. All right. It has Derek Jacobi. Let's see. Okay, so let me I Claudius was broadcast by the BBC. It was a BBC production back in 1972, I want to say. And if you watch that series, you will see a very young Patrick Stewart with hair, not a whole lot of it, but you'll see it. Simon McCorkindale, if you remember Simon McCorkindale, he was TV show Stephanie Zimbalist. It'll come to me. No, was it Remington Steele? Was it Remington Steele? Anyway, Simon McCorkindale, Patrick Stewart, It had Derek Jacobi. Now Derek Jacobi, I'm trying to think of a. He's been in a number of like British like films that have jumped the pond, and we know these actors from these films. But I can't think of one thing that Derek Jacobi was in, and yes, I think he was in Harry Potter. I have to go back and check. I don't want to misspeak. And may he rest in peace, because Derek Jacobi did pass away, I think, like 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, so basically just recently. So Derek Jacobi plays Emperor Claudius, or Claw. And if you watch the series, you'll know what I mean when I say Claw. And there's Jonathan Rhys Davies. Now, you know Jonathan Rhys Davies, right? But you probably know him as Gimli in Lord of the Rings. That's him, but he's this the funny thing is that he is this huge character. He's this huge guy, Jonathan Rhys Davies, and he plays the dwarf. So I it's kind of funny, but you've seen Jonathan Rhys Davies. I'm trying to think of other stuff that he's been excuse me, other stuff that he's been in, but it's not coming to me. The only thing that comes to me is Lord of the Rings. And so there was John. He's been in a number, like he was in, oh my days. I'm just like I'm drawing a complete blank on who was in this. All right. You know what? This is what I'm going to do with my, I'm bouncing back and forth. This is going to be a longer episode than I expected. So, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to and um and I'm going to read off the cast. Okay. So, it had John Hurt. That's who I was thinking of, John Hurt. Now, you have seen John Hurt. He was definitely in Harry Potter. He played the guy who sold wands, right? That's John Hurt. I can't remember his character's name. Brian Blessed, or Blessed. He played Emperor Augustus. And Sean Phillips, you've probably seen her and stuff. If you're an Anglophile and you watch, the British shows like I do, you've seen Sean Phillips, and I think that's how you pronounce her name. And another, like I said, Patrick Stewart was in it, a very young Patrick Stewart. And so the TV series that's based on this book basically follows Emperor Claudius. Um, it follows, really, it doesn't follow, it kind of follows his life, but it follows what happened before he was born, and all the intrigue and drama with his grandparents and his parents, because his grandmother Livia, man, she was no joke. Empress Livia, who was married to Caesar Augustus, man, she was no joke. She poisoned like practically everybody who stood in the way from her son gaining power. So she even poisoned her own husband, right? According to the book, she poisoned her husband. She put poison, like her husband, Emperor Augustus, towards the end was very, very paranoid, and he wouldn't eat anything. This is according to the book that was turned into the series. That's what's going on. And he refused to eat anything. So what he would do is that he would only eat figs from the tree that he grew. What she did was she coated all of the figs with the poison, and that's how she killed him off. So it was just like the so you follow the life of Claudius through his ratchet family. And the thing is that Livia was killing people left and right. Everybody was killing each other left and right. But here's Claudius; he's still standing, because they thought he was an idiot because he was lame, because he had a huge stutter, because he I think he had a twitch. He would have a nervous twitch also. So they just thought he was a out and out idiot, but he was the smartest of all of them. But even though he was smart, he just managed to roll with the punches, Wu Wei, right? He understood his inner nature. He understood his limitations. He knew that they thought he was lame, he was stupid, he was all these things. So he was like, okay, if they think this of me, then I'm just gonna roll with it because I can't. I'm not gonna pretend to be. He didn't even want to be an editor. I mean, editor. He didn't want to be emperor. They kind of pushed him into it. So it goes through the life of Claudius and all that he went through and all the stuff that happened to him. And then it goes to his death. And that's when Nero, the one that fiddled while Rome burned, that's who succeeds him. And like I said, Emperor Nero and his mother, who was married to Claudius, yes, yes, Claudius married his niece, his great niece. I know that sounds weird, right? But they didn't have relations or anything like that. They weren't sleeping with each other. They were just ruling in name only. Okay, there was nothing like, and yeah, it was weird. So the both of them killed Claudius. They poisoned him with mushrooms, according to the TV show, and that's how he died. So that that I it's very just amazing to me. And if you think about it, there are certain things that happen in your life in which certain aspects sort of intersect and produce this strange sort of thing that happens where you get a certain body of knowledge that you never really tried to pursue or weren't really interested in, slightly, but not enough to make you buy a book and read it. So I want to give a shout out to that coworker. I don't know who she is. Maybe, she'll stumble upon this video. Maybe she'll recognize me. But we were working in Bloomfield, Connecticut, okay, at MetLife. I was the proofreader, you were the graphic designer. You were the one that recommended this and this to me. And so I want to thank you for putting me on this path because it really was very, very interesting. And I'm still learning and I'm sharing it all with you. So I hope that I have intrigued you enough to go get your own copy of the Tao of Pooh. I will let you know what's going down with the Tay of Piglet and let you know, like, I'll break down the Tay of Piglet for you for this. Um, and I hope you find I Claudius because it is very, very good TV series. But again, I'm going to make the same recommendation that coworker made, in that you really need to read the book before you watch I Claudius, and then everything will click for you. Okay. So I'm going to wrap up this very long episode of Behind the Green Screen. I hope I've added something to your book collection, that you can go back and reread over and over. I have a book in my library that I haven't read, and it's called Create Your Own Religion. And it was suggested by a different coworker many moons ago. And I really need to read it because I've sort of been doing that naturally. And so I want to explain how to create your own religion really works, especially given what I've just talked about with Taoism. All right. So until next time, I don't know what my next book will be. By the way, I did, if you go back to my episode, I think it was episode 4, Murder She Read, and I talk about a mystery book that had that was written by a Black author. I found the book. And so what I can do is I can talk about that for a different episode, as well as Create Your Own Religion and some other books that I've been coming across in my library and thinking, oh, snap, I would really love to do a segment on that. So Yeah, there's more coming. I don't know what's coming up next. I don't want to set myself up for anything, but I will be covering another book from my library. But in any event, I'm going to end this here. Stay safe. I know it's a crazy world out there. And, to quote Lord of the Rings, you take chances the minute you step out of your front door, but it's going to be all right. All right. Until next time. Bye.